Okay, welcome to today's live stream. Today I'm going to be doing something similar to what I was doing before, where I'll do a live stream and then I'll edit it together and make it a shorter video lesson. And so the theme of this live stream and the video will be sculpting a torso using microcrystalline wax. So I'm Andrew Joseph Keith. I'm a sculpting instructor, and in this video we're going to be going over how to sculpt a female torso using microcrystalline wax. But all of the principles that I'll be talking about can also be applied to whatever type of clay that you prefer if you want to sculpt the entire torso just out of clay. Before we get into it, if you're interested in getting these reference images that I'll be using for the sculpting process, you can find this pose. This pose is Eva 004, and it's one of the free poses that you can get on the Figure Sculpting Fundamentals course page over at Proca.com. If you go down on that main page to downloads, and then you can download 10 poses that are censored. They're provided by Postspace.com, and you can get the full uncensored versions on Postspace, but these censored ones are free for students to use and anybody that's interested in sculpting. These are great because it has a turnaround. You get different angles, which will really help us out during the sculpting process for this female torso. As far as tools, we won't be using a lot of tools today. I'm going to put away my sculpting tools and just be using basically a butter knife is all just to cut away at this microcrystalline wax to give us manageable pieces. That's all I'll be using. And I also have a simple plywood baseboard. There's actually a shop near my house that does cabinetry, and sometimes they have these scrap pieces of wood. So this is a piece that I just grabbed from their recycle bin that they were getting rid of, and I asked and they said it was fine to just take those pieces they were getting rid of. And so that's what we're going to be using. Here's some demos that I've done in the past, some figure demos from photographs or from a single reference image. So they were of a comic book pose where they were showing different expressions, you know, brooding, heroic. I think this was anger or something like that. Anyway, this microcrystalline wax is really fun to play with if you're going to be sculpting by hand. Now, I don't recommend using tools with it because it sticks to the tools a lot, and so it's just a pain if you're trying to texture with tools and the wax just keeps sticking to it. But I don't have any issue with it sticking to my hands, so I recommend using this microcrystalline wax for sculptures where you're going to do the entire thing by hand. And you don't mind kind of a loose texture when it comes to the fingerprints that are going to be on that sculpture. Somebody's asking, did you ever sculpt a cartoon character? I don't think I have. I'm more interested in naturalistic, realistic art in general. So I'm going to move my chair over. Okay. And actually I'm going to, just for a little bit, I'm going to use this heat gun just to heat up this piece of wood and melt a little bit of wax onto the surface, just because I like to, I'm going to be building it directly onto this, and so I don't want the wax coming loose. Now you could do this, you could just put this piece of wood in the oven or something, you just got to warm it up, or you could do it directly over a flame. Just be careful not to burn yourself or to start the wood on fire, but you just want it warm so that the clay or some of this microcrystalline wax will melt onto the surface and give you a good attachment for the sculpture. Let's see. Hi Andrew, such a nice surprise. I was just watching your short fabric demonstration and saw you live. Do you feel like wax and stoneware clay are similar in method, or does it feel different? Well, there's definitely a different feel to wax clay versus like I prefer wax based clays, plastiline and even sculpting with this microcrystalline wax, just because I feel like it's a little bit doesn't give me the gritty feeling that I get from natural clay, so I really like it. But the sculpting principles are the same. It's really more just finding a type of clay that you can work with, that you can get used to, and familiarize yourself with, and then just using that over and over again to build that muscle memory to be able to build it quickly and efficiently. The nice thing about water-based clays is that they're a little bit more versatile in that they can be extremely soft if they're very hydrated, a lot of water content in the clay, and then they can get very, very firm as it starts to turn like leather hard, and so there's more versatility in that clay. But I do prefer wax-based clays because they're a little bit less messy. They don't dry out, and I don't have a kiln, so it just makes sense for me to use the wax and oil-based clays. So now that's a little bit warm. I'm just going to brush some of the clay on. You can see that'll just melt a little bit, and that'll give us a surface where the clay will really grab onto, or the wax, excuse me. I'm going to be calling it clay, but it's wax. It's microcrystalline wax. And this wax is a product of the petroleum refinement process, so it's a byproduct of that. So it's kind of a synthetic type wax. Okay, let me make sure. I'm gonna zoom in a little bit. Right on. I've had luck following along with your hand sculpt and torso using water-based clay. Yeah, yep, it works the same. You know, the clay, the material doesn't really matter as much as your knowledge of how to form it and, you know, create something interesting. That's going to be a lot more important than the type of clay that you're using. So I'm just going to take a piece of this wax and stick it on as like a secondary base. I'm going to press that on pretty hard to start to build the forms of the figure on top of, or of the torso that we're doing. Have you tried wed clay, W-E-D clay? I have not yet. I've heard it recommended several times, so it's probably one that I'll have to try out eventually, but I have not tried it. I have not tried that specific type of clay. So I'm just going to just place this to get started, this piece of wax, and just going to carve away to get it a little bit closer to the reference. In the reference, the shoulders are kind of tilted this way, the hips are tilted this way, and so I'm just going to remove just a little bit because I want to mostly build out the forms by adding clay or by adding wax. But I'm going to start very, very simple and just going to add on, say that there's going to be an arm that'll be coming up right here. Let's see. Let me get get a good framing to be able to work on this. These guys in the background. Okay, so I'm starting by just thinking about this front view, this front angle that I'm observing, and I'm going to just stick on pieces of wax and form them into the arms and the neck. I'm also going to take some of the wax. It takes a little bit for it to warm up. Let me grab some. I'm going to actually heat it up a little bit more. And warm up my hands. And this way, this wax is not super hard. It's a soft wax, but when it gets cold, like any other type of wax-based clay, it does firm up quite a bit, and it's kind of cold. So I'm just gonna warm it up a little bit. Somebody's asking what body part is the most difficult to sculpt. That's the portrait. The portrait is for sure the most difficult. So I'm gonna come to the side view and just make some adjustments. So we got kind of this zigzag pattern here. But I'm going for trying to keep it very simple. I'm going to add, there's going to be a leg right here on this side. Another leg over here. Gonna add some clay to the stomach area. And I'm also just going to cut away some where I think there's probably not very much clay. So here in this area of the crotch, I think that there needs to be some clay removed. So I'm just going to take that butter knife and remove that. Can't come in right now, I'm recording. Okay. So now, going to look at it from the side view and try to capture the silhouette or the outline from the side, from this side. Side view by laying in some clay along the center line. Right there. So I really want to make sure that I'm capturing this C curve of the spine. That's an important part of this torso. Gonna add some clay to the glutes in the back. That comes out that way. And so I recommend starting very two-dimensionally and just thinking about one angle at a time. So we started with the front view. Let's go ahead, we can actually go back to the front. And be a little bit more specific with what's happening there. So we started with the front view, then we went to the side view, now we're coming back to the front. And by just worrying about one angle at a time, it makes the torso something that's complicated. It makes it easier. It makes it easier to understand and a little bit easier to represent. Let's see, I'm just going to remove a little bit more clay right here because I feel like there was just a little bit much. Okay, then I'm going to see, we got this arm. This arm's kind of swooping this way. This arm comes out a little bit more. Right. I'm going to cut away just a little bit more right there because we want things to be very thin at this stage, because most of the building of the forms I want to do by adding little pieces of clay, so it just makes it easier if everything's nice and thin. Because this wax is great for sculpting by adding little pieces of clay. It's not that great for removing clay you know, with a tool because it's so sticky. So I want to, as much as I can, I want to sculpt by adding. Okay. Okay, now I'm going to switch back to the side. Let's go back to the side view. And these two views, the front and side, are going to give us a foundation. I'm just going to draw a center line to keep me in line. That center line's not gonna move a lot through the rib cage or through the pelvis, but in between is where the change in the angle comes into play. And while I'm looking at it from the side, I want to make sure that things align. So the high point here on the hip, where it starts to turn back, I want to make sure that that is aligned with this area of the crotch, because that's the widest point is typically where the crotch is, right there. And so I want to make sure that as I'm adding clay to the front, that's aligning with the side view where I've put these forms that are coming out at the side. So I'm conscious of that, and I'm looking for landmarks to say, like, this is where, for example, where this angle changes. And then I can look and see, okay, that angle changes a little bit above where this deepest part of this inside curve is. So I'm trying to match up those sides as I'm working. Then we're going to sculpt simplified versions of the rib cage, which is just an egg shape. So I'm thinking about this egg that's inside here, that's a little bit wider towards the bottom and thinner towards the top. But that's not including the muscles to the back and muscles to the shoulder. We're just thinking about the rib cage. And then we've got quite a bit of curve in the belly coming forward because this back is so arched. So I want to make sure that I have that. So the belly's coming forward, but that doesn't mean that the model is not a thick model, so I want to make sure that it's not going to become too thick in areas. Everything should remain thin at this point. But I can add a little bit here because we have space to do that. Here on the back, we have that space. And I'm going to thicken up this back part of that rib cage egg shape by adding some pieces of clay over here as well. How long do you need to make one figure like that? Like these back ones, these black ones were maybe a couple hours of work. So maybe each one was maybe 4 hours of sculpting. They're kind of quick gestures, but fun ones. And this torso I'll probably have a rough torso sketch within the next hour and a half or 2 hours, or maybe a little bit more, but okay. Come to this other side and the same thing. Gonna add some thickness for that back because we still have plenty of room. I can even hold up the sculpture. Let's see. And if you close one eye and then look through your sculpture at the photo reference, you can check yourself. Or what I could do is I could just hold it up and look at the camera just to check the proportions. Well, the camera has some readings and things on it, so I'm just gonna hold it up. What I'm doing right now is I'm holding it up, closing one eye, looking through that one eye at the sculpture, or at the reference through the sculpture. And that gives me some more visual information. What I'm seeing is that it's a little bit more bent forward than what I have. Something like that. But it's starting to take shape. Okay, let's go to this back view and work on that a little bit. So we're gonna turn to the back, and I'm trying to base it off of the pelvis. If the pelvis is facing directly at me, then that's the angle that I want to be observing from this back view as we're working on it. So again, we need to remove a little bit of material here where there's going to be some negative space under the glutes. I'm just going to cut some more clay to work with. And by just keeping the clay, or this wax, microcrystalline wax, by keeping this microcrystalline wax in my hand, I can keep it warm so that it's easy to grab little pieces and add it onto the sculpture. So I usually find that just body temperature is enough to warm it up for making it nice and pliable. Again, this is not like a beeswax. It's softer than that, especially at body temperature. So we've got this leg that's pulling down. Now I'm going to start laying in pieces of wax along the direction of the muscles. And to do that, I'm going to draw some guidelines. So here we have about where the dimples of Venus are, which make up this little triangle of the sacrum before the glutes. I'm just going to draw that. So there's the pelvis at this angle. The little dimples will be perpendicular to that, and then a little triangle for this area right here. Let's see. And then the back will curve down this way. Listening to your stream is so relaxing. Well, I'm glad to hear that. I'm glad to hear it's not stressing anybody out. But yeah, sculpting should be relaxing, so I hope it's a break from the chaos of your everyday life. Or hopefully your everyday life is not that chaotic. But art should be a reprieve. So here I'm just looking at the reference and then trying to lay in these little pieces of clay along the direction of these forms that I'm observing. So right here is going to be the gluteus medius, which on the female figure kind of blends up into the oblique. And then there's a little bit of a transition from that form to this little fat pad on the side of the leg, and also a group of muscles that makes the hips wider. And it's right in the area of the greater trochanter, which is right here where that pushes out on the surface, but then it's covered by some muscles and fat, making the female pelvis wider than the male pelvis. Let's see, and then on this side, I'm feeling like I want to remove just a little bit of clay to more accurately represent this dip in right here. Make sure I have that. Then it widens. And then the leg moves out away from the pelvis in that direction. Okay, so here's what it's looking like at this stage. Very simplified, and we're just trying to capture that essence of the pose, the gesture, the movement, and then a very simplified version of the forms. Okay, let's see. Gonna add just a little bit more mass here in the glute. Okay, now I'm gonna just draw in a little bit of the separation of the spine. It kind of dips in, and so I'm gonna give myself some space there to address that. All right, it's coming slowly together. So now I'm thinking about the muscles of the glute and their shape, how the gluteus maximus here turns into the gluteus medius, but everything's going to be very soft, very soft. Everything's going to be soft for these hips and the the forms, and that's because of the subcutaneous fat that softens everything on the average female figure. There's rare exceptions that are maybe athletes or very thin or emaciated, but for the most part, that layer of subcutaneous fat is just going to soften everything so that things will blend into one another. So you don't want to become over anatomical when sculpting the female torso. Otherwise, it starts to look more masculine, or it can unintentionally look more masculine if you're going in and laying in the muscles like an écorché. That definition can become overpowering, and you lose some of the attractive appeal of that soft, flowing figure, which we want to capture. I'm going to just squeeze here. I'm squeezing a little bit to actually pull out and lengthen this just a little bit, because I felt like it was a little bit too close to the pelvis. So I'm just squeezing to bring this more upright and give me a little bit more space between the rib cage and the pelvis. Okay, here's what it's looking like at this point. Still fairly simple. All right, let's go to a new angle. Let's go to the side view from this angle. Where this leg is coming forward in space towards us. And then I can see quite a bit of the gluteus medius here, and a very soft transition to the oblique. I'm just going to use my finger to give an indication of that oblique, which tells us basically where the top of the pelvis is, or where that superior iliac crest of the pelvis is. Kind of bends, reaches forward and bends upward in space. Now I'm going to start to be more specific with the rib cage. I see that the rib cage is kind of pushing up and out right here. Let me draw on the center line from the back, or I'm observing it from the back to make sure it aligns with the front. And then the pelvis, it's like right there. So I want to make sure I'm just holding this to give a line of where the pelvis, or the angle of the pelvis from the front view, kind of tilted forward, and I'm imagining that as just a box, just a simple box of the pelvis that's tilted, a little bit tilted forward in space. That's why this is, angled forward. And then, that box should match the front of the pelvis should be parallel to that back area. And that's important to make it feel realistic and feel like it makes sense in space. Let me just remove a little bit more material over here. You can see how much that wax sticks to the tool, so it's not very friendly with sculpting tools. That's why I try to do almost everything by hand. Okay. Going to add in some of the trapezius, the traps muscle here on the back. It's kind of squished up because the arms are raised up. This is squished a little bit, but we can't see a lot of the details because that hair is down, so we have to make things up. Here. Going to also lengthen these arms so that we can follow the anatomy a little bit up into the arms. Not all the way. We're not going to sculpt the arms and head. This is mostly about the torso, but I find that just adding a little bit more information, especially in these complex areas like the shoulders, the hips. If we were just doing a torso that was like that, then we're missing a lot of the knowledge that we get from doing these transition areas of the shoulders and the hips. Those are difficult areas. There's a lot of muscles and bones interacting in those areas, and so don't neglect those difficult areas for these studies, because it'll really help with the whole figure if you understand how the rib cage transitions into the neck, or how the rib cage transitions into the armpit and then into the arm. And so these are the little bits of knowledge that we're trying to learn as we're doing these studies. And we're trying to make sense of the figure as a whole. Gonna remove some of the clay here behind the leg. I feel like it was getting a little bit thick in that area. Everything should be thin. And then slowly we're building the thickness one piece of clay at a time. But we don't want to rush it. So I find that when I rush to get the exact amount of mass really fast, then usually I have to redo a lot of work because I wasn't careful and thoughtful when I was placing those little pieces of clay. A little bit more mass here in the back. Then as I added that gluteus medius here on the back, or here on the side, then when I turn it to the back, then that center line feels like it's moved too far this way because there's some more thickness. So I'm going to press that in, and I'm going to extend this out a little bit more on this side. There we go. Make sure we're in frame for whatever we're working on. Oh man, I just figured out I did something wrong. I forgot to push the record button before I started. So now, man, now this live stream is the only version of the torso that I have. And it's the definition on the live stream is really low, which is why I don't like using it. I don't like editing together the live stream into the shorter videos because the quality is so low. Man, that's really disappointing. Shoot. I did not. I even thought about it, that how bad it would be if I forgot to push record, which is what I do so often with these live streams. Because I think, oh, I'm live, so it's recording, but I have to push record on the camera too to get the footage. Man. Okay, well, I guess this will just be a live stream. It won't be turned into a longer demo. Man, that is very frustrating. Okay, well now I'm just going to start working all around. Let's see. Guess we can add the indication of the chest starting to develop, the breasts. Let's do that. See where those are. And this, because the arms are raised, they're going to be stretched. So the chest muscles and the breast tissue is stretched as those arms are reaching up. So that's important to keep in mind. And then that breast tissue transitions into the pectoralis muscle, and then that transitions up into the shoulder when the arms are extended up like this. So we've got that form going from one group to another. Same thing on this side. going to remove a little bit to give myself room for that breast tissue into the pectoralis muscle, into the shoulder, wrapping around the arm. Around the arm. And the shoulder comes up pretty high on the humerus. Man, I cannot believe I did not record. Man, that is really frustrating. That was going to be today's video. Now I don't know what I'm going to do. Maybe I'll put a time lapse or something of another sculpture. So if you're interested in these, the reference that I'm using, this censored reference, there's 10 free poses that are available on the Proco Figure Sculpting Fundamentals course, that main page. And if you download the figure sculpting assignment checklist, the free PDF, there's a link in the description. If you download that, then there's a link to where you can download 10 of these poses that have the figure turning around. And so it's a great resource if you're interested in sculpting. Hope you'll take advantage of that. If you have any issues, just let me know, but those links are in the description. And yeah, I picked the poses for these. PoseSpace does a great job of documenting poses for artists and sculptors, and so I appreciate them, and hope you guys find those references that are free worthwhile. Here's what it's looking like at this stage. Let's go to another view and keep working on it. Let's go back to this back view. Hi, says Onyx Loves. Hello. What do you do when you imagine a good sculpture idea? Um, like when I think of something that I'd like to become a sculptor, or um, like imagine it in that way. Usually I'll, I have notes on my iPhone where I can just, write down ideas that I have for artworks. If it's something where I can't put anything on paper or do a maquette or something, but I'll just, put down the concept, and then once the concept's down somewhere where I can go back and find it, then I'll probably do some either some sketches, or I'll look for some references that are similar to the idea that I have, and just try to learn more about the subject or pose, or if it's a specific like event, or like a passage of scripture where something's happening and characters are interacting, then I'll go and research that a little bit more, and then maybe build a maquette, something similar to these, like sketches where there's some details, and or sometimes I'll just go directly into the finished sculpture, like the size of sculpture that I'd like to do. And so I'd say those are the primary steps of just recognizing, oh, this is something that I'd like to look into more. This is something that I'd like to explore, a pose or an idea or a character, and then just starting to document that through sketches or through notes or like wire armatures, taking them and posing them in different ways. So I think just being able to play with an idea is a good skill to have. Okay, I think I'm going to leave this study about at this stage for now. Maybe I'll come back and work on it more later. It's coming slowly. I like where it's headed, and it feels like the proportions and the symmetry is coming along. So that's kind of the process of sculpting a torso. And if you're interested in figure sculpting, then I encourage you to get the free PDF, and that has a link to all of these free references that you can download of a bunch of different poses, 10 different poses that you can use as references to sculpt the figure. And so if you just go down to the free PDF link for the figure sculpting course in the video description, then that is going to be a great resource. And if you find value in that, there is an option to pay for the PDF. And so if you think it's worth $5 or something, you could chip that in, and that helps me out. But if not, then just get it for free, and there's nothing wrong with that. And if you like the free stuff, you might consider getting the full courses, the premium courses on figure sculpting, if you really want to dive deep into how to construct the figure in traditional clay. There's also a portrait sculpting course and a hand sculpting course. So those are also some resources that you might be interested in. My ebooks, An Artist's X-Ray Vision on the male figure and the female figure, are also available. And there's links for those in the description, and those help me out as well. And I appreciate anybody that gets those and supports the page in any way. It's really appreciated. So I will maybe work on this more later. But for now, I'm just going to do that as the live stream for today. Be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel if you're interested in this type of stuff. And let me know if you have questions or things you'd like me to cover in future videos. I'm doing this one because somebody was asking about doing a sculpture using microcrystalline wax, and it's really fun. It's a nice, fun material to work in, and so that came from a suggestion, and so I try to take those into consideration when people are curious about a specific thing. Yeah, other than that, I hope you guys can stay creative and stay productive, and hopefully I'll see you again soon in another video.